Hi everyone and welcome to another video on my channel. My name is Busi, a South African who moved to Canada in 2019 with her family and recently became a Canadian citizen. Today I am having a conversation with a very special guest. Her name is Chichi M and she recently moved to Canada from South Africa, but she was born in Zambia. Thank you so much for having this conversation with us today. And I'm just looking forward to sharing the perspective of somebody who recently moved to Canada. I have a number of questions for you, and I also ask people on Instagram to send me questions. So if you are following me on Instagram, you would have seen that story come up, and I hope you put your question in there so we can have Chichi help us answer some of the questions you might be wondering that somebody who recently moved to Canada can help answer. But before we get into things, can you maybe just give a brief intro about yourself, what you do even for work, just so people can get to understand the backstory before you came to Canada?
Okay. Sure. Well, thanks for having me here in your home and with you. Yeah, so you already said my name is Chichi. I am new to Canada. I moved here it's 3 months now, so about 3 months ago. Prior to that, so I was born in Zambia. I am Zambian and I was raised in Zambia until for my university I moved to South Africa, Johannesburg to study at Wits. This was in 2009. I did my university there and then I stayed on. So I have pretty much lived in South Africa for the last, I think that makes it 14 years, and then moved to Canada 3 months ago.
That was a long time living in South Africa. And I also have wondered, and I know some people might also want to know, why move to Canada? Why did you make the choice of moving to Canada after living in South Africa also for 14 years? Well, that's a long
Yeah,
time.
it's a long while. And yeah, South Africa became my home. Did feel like home. Well, in certain aspects, in other aspects, not so much. I still felt not so much at home. But overall, I can say, yeah, 14 years is a long time. I was at home. I did have my community, my friends over there. It was a lot of factors that led me to make the decision to come over here. Yeah.
Does
So
that
it,
portion of it not feeling like home have anything to
mm,
do with it? And would you mind touching on what some of those things were?
yeah, definitely. So it's one factor again, the part of not feeling at home. But like I said, so there's other factors that we'll probably touch on. But not feeling at home, I guess any foreigner can somehow relate to that. And I know like different people have different circumstances. So different foreigners have different circumstances, and those circumstances make them feel differently living in South Africa. But for me, yeah, we can't run away from it. There's an overall tension in South Africa when it comes to foreigners. Again, with that, some arguments are valid, like from the South African side, but I'm speaking in the shoes of a foreigner who may not be privy to some of the arguments that come from the South African side. I'm just speaking from an emotional standpoint as well, in terms of
And
how
your
that
lived
tension
experience. Yeah.
makes me feel as a person. So, yeah, in my day to day living, I can't say I had too many instances of like outright xenophobia, but there was some microaggressions, like you'd call it. I know that's a word that's used when it comes to like racial
Mhm.
tension. But there's certain things that you pick up where, for example, unfortunately, I didn't get to a point where I could speak the languages very fluently. I can pick up certain things in Zulu, Tswana, and at least on the basics, I can greet. But then you find that you meet someone and they greet you in Zulu or whatever the language. And yeah, you respond, you greet because that's what you can do. But then when they go further, you can't do that. And then you express to them, oh no, I can't speak. Immediately you can see
There's
like
something
a
changed.
shift. Yes. And that shift is not, it's not something tangible. You can feel it, but you can't go about and say, today this and this happened, because it's not that the person was outrightly rude to you, but
I totally
there was just
understand.
a shift in attitude.
And the way that they treated you or like spoke
Yes,
to you
yes,
afterwards.
yes. So you pick up on those things. So that's just one example. But like overall, I think almost every foreigner can relate. There is an overarching tension, even if it doesn't come on your day-to-day interactions. It'll come from the sentiments you read about or hear about either on the news, on social media, in terms of like South Africa's the popular one for us in their country. And like I said, there's probably some argument that I'm not privy to because I'm not South African. I'm just saying whatever comes out of that, how it makes me feel
Yeah.
as a foreigner, feeling like unwanted and just like I feel like I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like starting out as a student, obviously I was naive. I came in the country as an 18-year-old, just looking to study and to be at one of like the best institutions in Africa. And that's a reason why I came over to study. But with time, you start growing and you start picking up on certain things. And as a student, you're kind of shielded because everyone's there to study. So nobody's really trying to like pick you, oh, that one's a foreigner, that one's
Yeah.
what. And maybe in that sense, it was easier for me to find my group of people, a mix of people, South African and non-South African, who are my friends. But like when you come out of that sheltered environment and start living like in society and working, then you start to really pick up on it like, okay, I don't know. I'm not really feeling like
I'm welcome.
I'm welcome and this is home for me.
No, but thank you so much for being open enough here to share about that aspect of experience, because I'm a South African and I'm not somebody who does not see what is happening. You know, I have family who have married outside of South Africa, other Africans, but I always find that the treatment that Black South Africans, and when people talk about this as self-hate, as Black people, looking at other Black people and feeling like you do not belong, you need to go back. But if you would look at a foreigner, maybe that's coming from Europe, for example, there are foreigners who come from other parts of the world, but they are not treated the same way as foreigners who come from other African countries. And that's the part of, or the side of things that becomes very sad to me. And I don't have the answer as to this is probably why, but I do think it's also very largely those lingering effects of colonization that have come and have shaped the way that we look at each other, because we will first fight with people who are coming from outside. You need to go back home. You don't belong. And then when we come inside our own groups, we're also fighting tribalistic things. So there's, at the root of it, I think something that we still need to work on as Black people as a whole in Africa, because we were divided, essentially. We were divided by Europeans. And for anyone, I think, who's never heard of the Berlin Conference, look that up and just have a look, which can help you understand how colonization got us to a point where we see each other as, you are from there, you're not part of this place, when there's Europeans who literally came together, sat for a couple of months, and they divided the countries up the way that we know them today. And then you wake up the next day, people who might have belonged to the same tribe, they are now in different countries. They are supposed to be in different countries. Years down the line, we're no longer colonized, but we're still keeping to those same mentalities. And there's a lot of things that I think have affected the way that we think and the way that we do things. But in our decolonization process, we haven't really gone down to the root of it all. And we end up hating each other when there is no need. When you actually look at history and everything that has happened up till this point, I think it can give a lot of answers. Like, I don't have a very clear, this is what we could start doing to mediate and make the situation better. But I totally understand where you're coming from and your experiences. And I have seen treatment that is not very nice treatment. And for you to see somebody else who is a human being, like at that level of being human, is it really necessary to treat someone like this just because they are coming from another border from where you're from? So totally understand that. And thank you very much for just being open, because I don't think you are the only one who is feeling that way, but maybe other people might not feel like they can openly talk about the experience.
Yeah, I like just on what you said. I think as people, like generally, we don't challenge our attitudes. And I'm not talking as a collective, even just like on an individual basis. Um, when you discover, okay, someone's not from South Africa or whatever. So initially you're talking to them, you thought they were South African because when you greeted and you continued in Zulu or Tswana, you thought they were South African.
Yeah.
So now you realize they're not.
What changed?
What has changed?
What
Because
changed?
initially you thought they were. So clearly they look South African or they could be South African, but like now that you know they're not, what has changed? So we don't really challenge ourselves. Is it their culture that we don't like? But then do we even know their culture? Because what exactly in their culture don't you like? Do we even know it? Do they threaten you in some way? And threatening can be broad in terms of, are they depriving you of something?
There's this notion that I've heard a lot, like with that, are they depriving you of something, where some people have this notion that, oh, foreigners have come and they're just taking all our jobs. I don't take away from the fact that people will say, oh yeah, but there are people who are here illegally, right?
Mm-hmm.
In every single country, there are people who will come in and they're not coming in the right way, but the hate will also be directed at somebody who has come in, like you came in for school. You came in for school on merit. You made it into that institution, made it into, so you were studying there, and then you went on to study, but somebody will look at you and say, oh, but you have a job and I don't, without actually looking at the merit behind every single thing that you've gone through to get to the point where you are. And I think over and above everything else, my biggest thing is, if we want to look at it and say, do we realize there's problem here or not? Are we treating foreigners from other parts of the world the same? Somebody who's from North America, somebody who's from Europe. Are South Africans looking at those people like, you need to go back to America or you need to go back to Europe? I've never heard that. Never. I don't even think people consider them foreigners. Like they are just a tourist or somebody who's coming for economic development. But there's something that definitely needs to change in the way that a lot of South Africans look at things. And that is, I think, part of a big reason why I am planning to do a live. I know we spoke about it briefly when we were just coming here in the car, but I just want to open up the dialogue and just talk about some of the effects that colonization has had on Black people specifically when it comes to migration.
Yeah.
Because somebody who is moving, like you move from Zambia to South Africa, you're migrating to a different place. This is something that was done a lot pre-colonial times, but now that we are post-colonial times, we have a problem with people coming in. Some people have a problem with people going out. I'm a South African who's left. There's people who think there's something wrong with me because I chose to leave home, you know? But yeah, there's a lot to unpack there for sure.
There is. And as we were saying, like we were talking earlier, migration it's not something new. Even in my time in South Africa, when people would ask me questions like, why are you here? You can tell the attitude that a question is being posed. Because I think it's very valid to ask them, oh, like, why did you move? What were some of your motivating factors? But then some people will be like, there's an attitude with it, like, why are you here? You know? And you're just like, but this person, they're from Bushbuckridge. They're
They
here
came
in
to
Johannesburg.
Johannesburg. They don't see anything wrong with their migration,
Yeah,
but they've
right.
also migrated.
Like it's similar. Obviously, yes, there's borders to consider, but it's a similar thought
Very
process. You
similar.
left on Mpumalanga or wherever else for other opportunities in Johannesburg.
Yeah.
And it's
My
the same for
parents, my
someone.
dad moved from the Eastern Cape to Johannesburg. My mom moved from KZN to Johannesburg, and that's where they met. So now people are supposed to say, go back to KZN, go back to the Eastern Cape. But just because you're within the South African border, which if we go back to that Berlin conference, other people from other places who are not affected by these borders, where they are the ones who decided that you're going to live like this. And it's just brought up a lot of tension amongst us. Now, on that same note or theme, how has your experience been moving to Canada and having people just ask the same question? Why? Why did you choose Canada? Or how have you found people to be when they are asking you that question since you moved this?
So far, when I've been asked that question by Canadians, it's really from a point of curiosity. They want to find out, like, how's my country doing? Like, you know, like where I'm from, like how we do life, what it's like culturally. And yeah, maybe those reasons led me to seek a different experience. It's more from a point of curiosity. That's what I've noticed. Okay, I've only been here 3 months,
Right.
disclaimer. So maybe I'll find someone who will ask me with attitude, like, why are you here? But not yet. So far, it's really been from a point of curiosity. And then also, I've had a couple of networking sessions through work, and in those networking sessions, it's been a cultural exchange. Even those people have been willing to tell me more about Canada and places that I can visit and what Canada is like because I'm new.
Yeah.
So they're also like inviting me into their Canadian experience. Whereas in South Africa, it wasn't that way, in that I felt like a lot of people weren't so willing to share their South African experience with me. It almost like it belongs to me and
Right.
me alone. I'm not willing to share my South African experience with you. Well, except for my very close friends who are South African. But generally, I'm speaking generally, that wasn't, that's not what I got. It was not a cultural exchange.
Yeah. And then from a work perspective, what do you do for work? And moving from South Africa to here, are you still doing the same line of work? So let's just talk about that, and then maybe we can jump into how you went about the process of actually.
Okay. So just for some background, I have an actuarial background. So that's what I studied in university, actuarial science. But I work in not a traditionally actuarial space. So I work in credit risk modeling. So that's what I do. I currently work in consulting. So I consult to other institutions on credit risk.
Okay, so you were doing a similar role when you were in
Yes.
CSA and it's still a
Yes.
similar side. Okay, now from an immigration perspective, how did you immigrate? What's the program or the process that you followed to
Okay.
see yourself into that?
Yeah. So when I decided that, okay, this might be something I'd like to do, I started researching what pathways there are to immigrate to Canada. And one of them was express entry. So it looked like it was probably going to be the fastest way to immigrate. So I just checked my eligibility on their website, used the tool, just saw the points that I could potentially have once I have everything in order. And it seemed like I had a good shot. And at the time, I realized that age was also a big factor.
And it is.
Yeah. So I can't say I decided then and there that this is what I wanted to do. I was just like toying with the idea. But when I saw age, I'm like, I'm not getting any younger. And by that time, I was 29 actually. And the points start going down like quite drastically from age 30. So I was like, you know what? I haven't fully decided, but instead of waiting like to make up my mind, let me do this while age is still on my side and then get the ball rolling. If I decide to pull out of the process, I'll do that. But at least let me jump on the opportunity while I still can and age is on my side. So I used Express Entry, that's the federal skilled worker program.
Yeah, same program that I also moved at. And then how long was that process for you? How long did the entire process take?
Yeah, this answer will probably discourage people because my process took very long, but it was unusually long. So I don't think my timeline is the norm. Yeah, and the reason it was unusually long is when I decided to go through the process, that was actually 2020. Oh no, it happened in 2020. So by the time I put in my application in the pool, I think that was mid 2020. And they actually weren't processing any applications. They weren't doing any draws. So I was in the pool for maybe like 4 months without any draw happening. And then finally, after 4 months of being in the pool, they had their first draw. Luckily, I was like picked on the second draw. And then, yeah. So overall, from like start to finish, I can say 2 years until I actually got the confirmation of PR. Yeah.
But I also feel like if you're adding the pandemic to it, 2 years to me doesn't seem like a very long time. And the only reason I say that is because for us, it was around 14 months. It was pre-pandemic, but we had delays that came with an agency we were working with, which was like a big waste of money for us. But I don't think it's a long time. And also just consider the fact that if you are making the decision to move, it's a more long-term type of thing. You know, you're not looking at it. And I know I've had a lot of people who will reach out to me and say, I would like to move next month, or I'd like to move in 3 months. How do I go about it? And I don't know. There might be a process where things can be that quick. Maybe if you find work and you're moving under a work visa. But if you're doing it this way, the permanent residency way, yes, it can take 6 months. I know people who will say start to finish, it took them 6 months and they got their things. And this was pre-pandemic, like pre-2020. But if you are thinking about why you want to move in that long term side of things, I don't think the 2 years should be something that discourages someone. Look at it as an opportunity maybe to save up more money. Because when you move, there's going to be so many things that need to change, so many things that need to be new. And money is going to be a big part of it, even if you are moving and you already have a job. I would just say look at it more as an opportunity where you have a bit more runway to plan your things out and then move.
Yeah, exactly. Also because like immigration is such a big thing. So if it happens for the person who's saying I'm looking to move in a month, like sure, in a month you're going to
It's
tell all your
lot.
loved ones, you're going to prepare yourself emotionally, you're going to come up with the money, you're going no.
There's too many things.
No,
There are too
so
many things.
so yeah, even me, I wasn't really in a hurry. And that 2 years, it didn't phase me because I was carrying on, I was living life. And actually, I feel like it worked out well because I did move here with my son. So it also gave him time to grow because he was probably too small even then. But I think the timeline shouldn't really phase you. Like you said, it's a long-term thing and you can use the time to do a lot of other things and just prepare. Yeah.
And then how has the settling in been for your son since you moved it? And how old is he? Like, just to give people a bit of a background in terms of age and the types of schools that you looked for him, and how did you go about finding a school, and how do you see him just settling into the new environments that he's in?
So yeah, so for everyone, my son is 3 years, 8 months. Yeah, so settling in, honestly, it hasn't been a problem for him. I guess because all he does is just exist and mommy is the one doing
Mommy is there,
everything,
yeah.
like sorting out the code and food. He just
As long
exists.
as I can see my mom, everything is fine.
Yes. So he's actually been okay. And thankfully, I also had time to prep him, like from the time we got the confirmation of PR to the time we actually left. We
love
had
that so
about
much.
yeah, we had about like 3 months or something like that. So in that time, I was prepping him. I said, we're moving to Canada. There's snow in Canada. You get to see snow. This and that. So I kind of made it an adventure for him. And thankfully, even the preschool he was going to in South Africa, they also did the same. Like when I told them every other day, they'll tell me, do you know, I'm moving to sunset, there's this and that.
And I feel like that for my boys as well was a very big part of helping them settle and just come in and, hit the ground running. Because we also went through that when we knew that, okay, it's final, we're going to be moving. We also started talking to them about it. Even at school, the favorite teachers that they had, oh, we're going to miss you so much when you move to Canada. Don't you want to bring me with? Like, don't you want me to come with you? Things like that. And it gets to a point for them where they're looking forward to this new place. You're not just waking up one day, packing all your things, and now you're telling the kid, oh, we're leaving. You're never going to see your friends. You're never going to see your loved ones. So that aspect of prepping the child for some time, like make it a process,
Yes.
I think is very important. And then when it comes to finding a preschool for him, now, how did you go about that process? Was it difficult? Because I know when we moved, there were a lot of preschools that had long waiting lists. But how is that process for you?
Thankfully, I binged your videos before I came. So I had heard about the Kids and Company from you. So for me, there really wasn't any need to look any further. So when I was still in South Africa, so what I did was I just checked their website. I also, because I had prepared where we would stay temporarily while we're looking for long-term accommodation. Thankfully, I also had the job before I left. So in terms of location-wise, I had a rough idea of the places that I would frequent. So I kind of knew which location I needed the Kids and Company Center to be at. And then when I had narrowed it down, while I was still in South Africa, I actually called them, asked them like what I needed to get registered. So pretty much they told me everything I needed. But the one thing I could only get once I was in Canada, and that was a bank account. But they told me as soon as you arrive and you open a bank account, just reach out and then we'll complete the registration process. So thankfully, I started the process before I did it. So that when I got here, basically within a week, he was already registered and he started transitioning and going into preschool.
Nice. And that point that you mentioned of already having a job for you, how did you
That was,
how did you do
yeah,
it?
that
Because
was a
I
big one.
tried, like I tried when I was still with the company I was working for at the time. I tried reaching out to people, before we even got to a point where we're moving. But for me, it didn't quite work out that well. What was the process that you followed? And yeah, like how did you do it?
That was a big one. Like, honestly, I'm still in awe that I managed to sort that out because also moving as a single mom, like, yeah, it would have been much harder. Not impossible, but it would have just been much harder for me if I didn't have the job already. So I'm really grateful that kind of worked out. So before I left, thankfully, I was working for like a global company that has offices like in multiple countries, and Canada being one of them. I knew that my best bet, like I could search for jobs in other places, but my best bet was actually to start with the company that I'm working for. Only because, yeah, it's internal. Whoever is in the Canada office at least has like a string of credible people to actually figure out who's this person, how does she work, and stuff like that. So, yeah, so that was my starting point. I'm like, okay, I'm going to look for a job internally. I did start with speaking to like senior management in my organization, telling them, okay, this is what it is. I got confirmation of PR in Canada and I'll be moving. If you know of how I can move to the Canada office, then great. But there were some delays with that, and I didn't want to just wait for other people to, try things out for me. So I was like, okay, what can I also do? So what I did, I was like, I'm just going to shoot my shot internally. So I went on LinkedIn, power of a search engine. I just put in keywords in terms of the area that I work in, and also specifically put Canada, the office, and different names popped up. And I went into their profiles and I looked for someone who's quite senior, like in the organization. So when I had narrowed it down, like to the list of names, I did send an email. Well, I was like, let me start with this person. If I don't get a response, then I'll move to the others. Thankfully, that person actually responded. So I emailed them, like using the organization email, managed to find them in the global addresses, sent them an email with my CV. This is my CV. I have confirmation of permanent residence. And that was important to state because then they would know that I don't need any further sponsorship. And it will kind of make the process easier. Even if you need sponsorship, you can get sponsorship. But I just feel if you don't,
You already have.
yeah, things
Yeah.
just move faster because, yeah. So basically, that's what I did. And thankfully, the person responded to my email the same day that I sent it and say, yes, I've reviewed your CV and you look like your area of work actually aligns with what we need, what we're looking for. And the person set up a couple of interviews. So even though it was like internal, I still had to go through the process as if it was external. And I went through the whole interview process and thankfully they gave me an offer and I managed to secure the job before I came. Yeah.
Well done and congratulations. But it's like the power of LinkedIn. I talk about it a lot. And there's so many different ways that you can use it. But that portion of LinkedIn being a search engine, you can find so many things and so many people even that you can try and connect with. And like you said, if that person was not responding, you were willing to go to the next
Yeah.
person until you found someone who will respond to you. And if you are reaching out to people, have your reasons, right, for why you're reaching out. Get straight to the point for what you are looking to get from connecting with them and not just send a hi and then wait and expect that person is going to say, what are you looking for? How can I help? But just prepare yourself in terms of what outcomes you're looking for and why you're reaching out to them in the first place. And if that first person you're reaching out to does not respond, because some people won't respond, maybe they're not even looking at their LinkedIn, go to the next person and the next one, even if it takes you 50 people, you know what you're looking for at the end of the day and I'm really happy it worked out for you. Super happy it worked out
Yeah.
for you. So I think let us go to some of the questions that we got on Instagram. Okay, so this first question says, what advice would she give to those considering immigrating from South Africa to Canada?
Do your research. Like, it can't be stressed enough. So even when I was moving, because obviously I had a similar experience being an immigrant to South Africa, I guess you could call it that. When I moved to South Africa, I was a student and I was young. So it's not like I had the opportunity to do my research or I had all these options. But when I came to a position where now I was considering it, actually, before I was considering it, I just thought to myself, like, okay, now if you had to go back and if you had the option of just moving to a country, yeah, which country would it be? And then I started listing down what I needed from that country. And then that's how come Canada became like the number one kind of option for me. So, like, just do your research.
What was the biggest pull for you that was like, Canada is going to be my number one? With
Um,
everything that you looked at based on what you were looking for in a country.
Because I had done the immigration process before with South Africa, I didn't want for it to be too tedious because I've done it before. So I'm like, if I'm going to do it again, like already it took a lot out of me to say I'm going to move again.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to do it again, let it be a place that is like immigration friendly and, has all these ways to immigrate without like unnecessary like
Yeah.
hurdle. And I think Canada is quite good with that. Their immigration is quite friendly. Yeah. There's even just how you navigate it, even the express entry system, how they talk to you, the email, it's quite friendly. So I needed something like that. Canada is also made up of a lot of immigrants, I guess, because of just their policies around immigration. I knew it would be much easier for me to settle. I wanted to be in a place that immigration was supported by the government. I didn't want to feel like, again, I was imposing myself on a country. So if it's supported, if they're saying we want immigrants, I want to go there. Yeah, I don't want to impose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a live I did a couple weeks ago, maybe a week, 2 weeks ago, I can't remember. But I was talking about how when you are planning to move somewhere, just looking things up when you're doing your research. And parts of that would be looking at that discrimination and xenophobia history of it. Because if you don't know, and then you are somebody who moves from another African, if you don't know by some chance, I don't know if anyone does not know of what happens in South Africa from a xenophobia perspective. And it would be a very rude shock. Like, it would be shocking to your system to be like, I'm in Africa, but this is how I've been treated. So that's where the piece of that research is very important. But there's a whole lot of other things that you can look for, right? But I think that is also a very big one when you look at coming from the African continent, especially because I know for me, racism is a big one that I want to know. I wouldn't want to move to a place where I'm constantly going to be reminded of my blackness and have that taint every single thing that I do. And I feel like, quite interestingly for me, I remember my blackness more when I'm in South Africa than I do, which is, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. So what are some of the challenges she faced during the application process? So were there any challenges that she faced during the application?
During the application process, I guess it was the amount of time it took. Because in that time also certain things had expired, like my police clearance report. And the thing is, because I was living in South Africa, but I'm Zambian. So I also needed like a police clearance report from my country.
Yeah.
So, all those things, it was like logistically, it wasn't the best of things to get again.
We're spending money.
And money as well, because even our medicals also expire. And it's quite expensive to do your medical. So, yeah, I was like so irritated when they asked me to resend. I was like, but you know what? I was like, okay, let me do this because if they're asking me to resend, I'm sure there's a chance, yes, that I'll get in. So, yeah.
So what did she do with her furniture and belongings before she left SA?
When it comes to things, I'm not that attached. Maybe I'm a sentimental person, but not
Furniture is furniture.
Yeah, furniture is furniture. And I knew like, okay, with time, I'll also create another home and, get other furniture. So some of it I gave it away to family, to friends, and then some of it I sold, which also helped me, I guess, fund the process. But yeah, I didn't ship anything because I just felt like whatever I have, I can,
Yeah.
buy in future, and the cost of shipping would probably
It's like
not be
that's not
worth
make
it.
sense.
It wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, I felt the same. Like for me as well. We never shipped anything. Like we just bought stuff after same experience. Okay, so which province and the area is she in, and how is she finding it? So which province?
So I'm in Ontario.
I'm like, which province? I'm like, obviously, like kind of in the same province.
Yeah, I'm in Ontario, Toronto. So yeah, that's where I am. It was kind of sick because I got the job before and it was based here. But also, I think even before the job was one of the provinces that I was looking to come to.
And how have you been?
Been great. It's been great so far. I think we were also lucky we came in the summer, just and summer was starting, and there's so much to do in summer. The place is beautiful. But one thing I can say, South Africa is like also really beautiful. So I think moving from South Africa to here, like it hasn't been like, oh wow,
Yeah.
but it's also beautiful in its own way. And yeah, it's been great. The people have been great. So far, thankfully, so good. Yeah.
Nice. I think if anyone has a choice and you can move during the summer, that's what I would recommend. Because we moved in winter, we moved in January, which was like peak winter in 2019. And I remember the day we landed, everyone was just like, why January? Like, why did you pick, like, of all the times and months you could move in? I think this is the worst. So, but we didn't know any better also at the time. So if you would be able to pick something else, like I would say come in the summer. And then, you will enjoy the summer. And then when winter comes, it comes in slow. You're not just dropped into the middle of it like we were. Okay, let me see. This is the last one from these ones, but this person is asking how much is the cost of relocating and how did she budget or save for it?
So the cost of relocating is actually your application fee, your medicals. Well, that's if you're using the express shoe routes. If you're using another route, if it's employer sponsored, I guess there's other aspects to it. But the route that I used, so yeah, it would be getting your medicals done. It would be getting your qualifications assessed. So that would be WIS, writing your IELTS test. Yeah, and the application fee. So that's in the process, like while you're applying. And then also you need to show proof of funds. You need to show that you have funds. And me moving here as a single mom with the child. So it's two members of our family. So meaning like with every additional person, there's more that you need to show that you have. But with this proof of fund, initially I thought, oh, this is so onerous. But you actually need those funds, especially if you don't have a job. Like you need, actually what they're asking you to show is what you actually need to live. So it's actually really important. Like those showing those funds is really important. It's not an unreasonable request. Yeah. So in terms of those other fees that I mentioned, like where's your medicals, also getting your police clearance certificates, those are costs. To be honest, I can't really remember what each costs.
But I do have a video that I created, maybe it's around a year ago now. I'm breaking down the costs for an individual who would under the Express Entry program. So I'll add that in the description of this video. So you can have a look at that. And then I go through the list. Like I literally sat and went, okay, medicals, ways, like all the things that you need to do and added the price at that time. But if you look at the description of that video, you'll be able to find links where you can go and check how much the price of the thing is today. So for example, when we went through writing the IELTS, it was 2,500. Right now, it's over 4,000. So who knows how much it's going to be by the time you're getting to this video. And even if you shared an exact amount of what you paid for it, it's very likely different, right? So I just encourage us to go and have a look at that video and then check the description of that video, which I will add in the description. But it's going to just break everything down and also share a link for where you can find the proof of funds. Because what is required from an individual is different to a family of 2, family of 3, family of 4. And you don't just take that amount of an individual and multiply it by the number of people that are moving. That's not how it works. But yeah, I'll add that in the description. So from a saving perspective and budgeting for all of these costs, how did you go about doing that?
Okay. So aside from proof of funds, just preparing your application in terms of words, outs, and whatever. So those, like, I would fund as I go, because that's not, my application is not even in yet. I'm just like preparing. So I'll fund as I go, like with my salary coming in. So I would fund those things. And then with proof of funds, so actually part of it came from my savings. So I did have some savings. This is just like ordinary savings that you'd have saved like over time from your salary, but it didn't cover the full amount. So I didn't have the full amount that they were asking for. So when I had actually spoken with my parents about this undertaking that I want to do, and I realized that early enough, I realized that I might not make the proof of funds. So we had a conversation with my family. I asked my parents that, would you be willing to help your daughter? And thankfully they were. So with the additional amount, what they did is they actually gave it to me, and they had to sign a gift deed from that. So that's just like an affidavit or signed by a notary public, just a document, a letter or something, that we have gifted our daughter, just, from our hearts, because she's our daughter, without any, like,
We're not expecting
no
that.
expectation. Yeah, so that's how come I came up with the full amount. And thankfully, like before I actually left, I had more, because remember my process
It was longer.
2 years. So it also allowed me to come up with more funds and more funds, such that even on my own, I was able to.
Get to that point.
Yeah.
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 So I think it's also just very important that we talk about money a lot more, right? Especially the Black society, I will say, because of all of these things that have happened in the past. We've been at a place where a lot of us have been disadvantaged from an economic perspective. And when it comes to things like, oh, you're getting paid, what are you spending your money on? There's a lot of things where people could potentially cut. Like you could cut certain things and prioritize. If you know you want to move, start prioritizing safe, just making sure that when you're getting paid, before you're paying all the other bills that you have, you're first paying yourself, no matter how little that amount is, and then take things from there. I did a series at some point where I spoke about different things that you could do to try and get yourself to a point where you're even maybe making a bit more money if the 9 to 5 job, if you are working a 9 to 5 job, is not giving you enough for you to say, I'm able to start saving. And maybe look at your particular situation as something that might take you maybe 5 years. Because maybe you're not able to say, okay, in a year, I'm going to have 100,000, for example. There's so many people, and when you look at the stats of how much people earn, not a lot of people can say, I'm going to be in that position in this short time frame. So maybe your process needs to take a bit longer. And if you're going at it with that intention, and you know that this is what I'm working towards, I think that's just going to help yourself. And if other people need to meet you halfway, the way you were able to go to your parents and say, I've got this, like you're not just saying this is the total amount, I need it. But you're like, I've managed to be able to put this together and I need help and support in getting to this place. But start where you can, and then you'll see as you move along, like how things work out for you. But I think planning is important, very big part of it. So any last words or anything to anyone who is watching this and is saying, I want to be where you are in the next X amount of time?
I think just do your research, and then also just know where you want to get to, like in future. So immigrating to another country is going to get to that place that you envision for yourself. Go for it. Like, have the courage to do it. Like with anything in life, there's no guarantees. And it's almost like an investment. So, and we're investing daily in our lives. We invest in people, in relationships. We invest our money, in different places. So this is just one aspect of life. And it's risky, but it does have its rewards. I would say be courageous about it. And you can have a fallback plan. I think it's good to have a fallback plan. Like, if it doesn't work, because there is a possibility, like it couldn't work, but have a fallback plan. And like also kill your ego a little bit, because sometimes we don't want to make changes because of our ego, and also knowing that we'll have to start from scratch. Like say you were living a comfortable life and this is what you had, but now moving would require you to start from scratch. Say maybe sleeping on an air bed again. But it could be worth it. So kill your ego a little bit and do what it takes to get where you want to go. Be courageous and yeah.
Love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much for your time. It has been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Thank
And I'm also very grateful that I got to meet you. Like, this is one of those things that I absolutely love about being on the internet because I get to meet really great people that I think are really great humans. But thank you so much for sharing your story and taking the time to come spend with my family and then making this video for you guys.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all the content that you keep putting out. Like, that's why I wanted to do this because your content has helped me so much. So, I mean, if just talking about my experience can help someone, you know.
If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. My name is Busi, and I will see you on the next video.
Thank you for watching.